The Eagles have agreed to trade veteran wide receiver Torrey Smith to the Panthers in exchange for cornerback Daryl Worley, a former third-round pick of the Panthers from West Virginia. He's 23, a base salary of $650,000, and the Smith move gives up a $5 million player. So money is the factor here in this deal, John. It's a very interesting deal for the Eagles and for Howie to be able to find a partner to take Torrey Smith because, quite frankly, he was a candidate to be released.
Oh, he wasn't a candidate to be released. He was going to get released. So when you look at it from that standpoint, everybody in the league knew the Eagles couldn't move forward with Torrey Smith at $5 million. So he took advantage of a situation, and it might have been the only situation in the NFL where you have a new offensive coordinator in Norv Turner, who basically uses the same offense he used in Dallas. And sorry for my dog barking.
Excited about this trade.
Used in Dallas in the early 90s, and he likes to go vertical. And the one thing Torrey Smith can do is stretch the field. And that's about the only thing he can do at this stage. This is a magic trick. And that's what I kind of wrote at 973ESPN.com. Because not only did he get a 23-year-old corner who's not great, I'm not trying to stretch it like this is Richard Sherman in his prime, but he's okay. He's got starting experience, and he makes $650,000 a year. So he got $4.4 million in cap room, essentially, and a 23-year-old corner for a player he didn't want. I'm getting tired of giving Howie Roseman accolades, but you have to.
Is this move kind of the precursor of anticipating Robinson walking out the door? Does Worley kind of slide into the slot role, or is this just, hey, I don't care if Worley can play or not, we got cap flexibility?
No, he's not a slot guy. In fact, he's a big corner. He's 6'1", just over 200 pounds. So he projects to the outside, and he's more of a zone-based corner. So he's not a slot guy. And if you're looking for a domino, I don't know if they can keep Patrick Robinson, but this is a bigger indication to me that they're probably at least going to try to spin off Ronald Darby and trade him maybe for some draft pick capital. Because he does not project inside at all. He's a complete outside corner. And some people have even said he may move back to safety because he's very good against the run. He's very good in run support. He's not the best coverage corner in the world.
Yeah, I saw that he was 12th, the 12th rated corner against the run this year. I remember it at West Virginia. He reminds me a little bit of Douglas. He's a bigger guy. You know, both those guys a little bit bigger, a little bit more physical. So, right. You know, moving him into the slot it seemed like it was going to be a challenge, but on the surface it was like, all right, maybe, they think that they can move him inside, but you think he stays outside, but maybe opens the door to keep Robinson and move Darby.
Yeah, potential. I think they're going to have to see what the market is for Patrick Robinson because he played at such a high level. That's obviously trending towards he's going to get a lot of money. But on the other hand, he's a 31-year-old guy who hasn't put together really two consecutive good seasons in his NFL career. He's had injury problems in the past. So all of that enters into it. But if they are able to keep him, that's the best case scenario. Then you almost have to spin off Ronald Darby at that stage. It's going to be very costly in a year. There's concerns when he got injured, his conditioning and trying to get back. People inside that building were concerned with that. And you have a lot of depth at the position. And it's all outside, though. Other than Jalen Mills, he might be the one corner that you could sort of project to move inside to the slot.
So, John, does this mean the Eagles need to find a wide receiver to replace Smith, or do you think there's an in-house candidate that they like?
Well, they like Matt Collins. I'm not sure he's ready to take over a starting role in the NFL. They're going to add bodies at wide receiver, but they were going to add bodies at wide receiver anyway. There was not any way Torrey Smith was coming back to this team. He did not play well during the regular season. He was better in the playoffs. He deserves credit for that. But the Eagles saw enough of him. And if you go back to when he was in San Francisco, he's just not a very good receiver at this stage. And to be able, as I said, that everybody in this league knew he was going to get released. And to find the one team that would take him on at $5 million, it's pretty amazing.
Now, do you think, even though his numbers might not have been as good, was Torrey Smith, do you give him some credit for what he brought to the locker room or the veteran presence in there? Do you think he helped some of the younger Eagles wide receivers out?
Oh, yeah, he was a great guy. I mean, there's no doubting that. He was one of the, we talk about the Eagles locker room a lot and how they got along and how many good people they had and how many leaders. He was in that group. There's no question as far as his charitable work, as far as his ability to handle himself in a professional manner. All of that was grade A plus. I mean, he was a class act. But Howie talked in Indianapolis about sentimentality, and that was probably his toughest job this offseason, is to not get feelings like that into the way of the reality of professional football. And we talked about being a player sport yesterday and a talent-laden game. And the reality is Torrey Smith isn't a very good NFL receiver at this stage of his career. And the Eagles, as I said, they weren't bringing him back. They just weren't. So to get a 23-year-old corner, and as I said, even bigger than that, is almost $4.4 million in cap room. It's another home run.
Now I was going to chime in on that, the cap thing. How giving up the $5 million with Smith and getting back a $650,000.
Yeah.
So how that changes the future of other guys who may have been on the cap bubble. I know you wrote about Chris Long today.
Yeah, the Eagles still have a lot of work to do. As I said, remember, none of these moves are official until next Wednesday. So the Eagles, when this all started, were about $10 million over the cap. They agreed to take on $7 million more, essentially, with Bennett. That gets you to $17 million. Now they've gained some space, $4.4 million, as we said. You subtract that, you subtract about $2 million for Donnie Jones, and you see where they're all going, but there's still work to be done. They still have to make decisions on people like Brent Selleck and people like Vinnie Curry, and Chris Long is in that category. He's got a $500,000 guarantee roster bonus on March 18th. That'll probably be the drop-dead date. And there's a lot of, as I said, dominoes to fall. We don't know where this position is going. People are starting to speculate that they might even trade Brandon Graham. They're very, very deep at defensive end, and you can't bring them all back. So if Brandon's going to be here, Michael Bennett's obviously going to be here, well, then it's almost a fait accompli that Vinny's not going to be here, and Chris Long's probably not going to be here. But if they trade Brandon Graham, maybe Vinnie Curry's back, maybe Chris Long's back.
So trading Brandon Graham, you think, is a real possibility?
Well, I wouldn't say it's going to be done, but if you sort of read the tea leaves, we talked yesterday about how similar they are as players, Bennett and Graham, and the fact that they both play defensive end, they both move inside in the nickel as an interior pass rushing. Do you really need two of those type players?
So essentially you're saying that the Bennett move is a way to say we can replace Graham with Bennett and not have to pay that big contract.
Well, it could be. And that's the thing. Brandon obviously wants an extension. He wants a raise. And to be honest, he deserved it. He has outperformed his contract. At the same time, this will be his third deal. He's getting up in that age where you start to concern. Now you say, well, Michael Bennett's even older. Yes, but essentially the Eagles can opt out of that deal next year and pretty much move on from that contract. You would have to by signing Brandon Graham to an extension, you're going to have to outlay significant money up front and really tie yourself up for 2 consecutive years.
Right.
Now, in my opinion, there's no way they should trade Brandon Graham. I think he's that important to that defense. And by the way, Pete mentioned the locker room aspect of it. He's one of those guys who is not only a class act, but he's also the energy guy on that team. And Doug Peterson also always talks about how the Eagles practice and how their preparation is one of the foundations of their success. One of the reasons they're such a good practice team is because guys like Brandon Graham and even Stephen Means, who no one talks about, is because of their energy they bring each and every day at practice. I wouldn't trade them in a million years. But the Eagles, and we talked about sentimentality again, they're trying to build the best possible roster under difficult circumstances because of the cap, and they just got a very similar player. So you at least have to entertain the possibility.
No question that Howie's got a lot of magician-like things he's got to do here. Now, you mentioned Long. He's got a roster bonus coming up. Could they try to be sneaky, release him, and then try to get him back, or do they just got to bite the bullet on that $500,000?
Well, I don't think so. I think in Chris's case, I mean, he doesn't make a ton of money. He's only scheduled to make a little over $2 million. So I don't think that the money is as big as a deal. The Eagles would gain $2 million under the cap. A lot of it has to do with the fact, and he's admitted, and he did an interview with SB Nation, and the fact that he's won 2 consecutive Super Bowls. He's obviously nearing the end of his career. He's not sure 100% he wants back. And if he does come back, similar to what happened when he was in New England, he wants to be in a good situation. Now, he understands this defense is perfect for him. He already realizes that. He had a tremendous season as a sub-package rusher. But if the playing time's not going to be there for him, I don't think he wants to come back. So, again, if you keep Bennett and you keep Graham, you obviously have Derek Barnett, there's not going to be a ton of playing time to go around because you want Derek Barnett to get increased snaps. He might be one of those guys like Donnie Jones who just says, you know what, I won 2 in a row. I'm going to walk out on top.
Interesting stuff. John McMullen. Follow him on Twitter at JFMcMullen. Now, Pete, we talked to Lee Steinberg earlier today. Long's up for the Humanitarian Award. I mean, he's one of the last guys you want to let go out of that locker room, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we think about that. We just talked about Torrey Smith. I just mentioned Brandon Graham. He brought up Chris Long. So many people in this locker room, and you can't underrate that as far as the success of this team is how good that locker room was, and the fact we all questioned the Eagles last year when they traded Jordan Matthews, who was another one of those type guys. So you have to make difficult decisions. And the reality is Chris is 32 years old. As I said, he's obviously closer to the end of his career than the beginning of his career. He's admitted himself he's thought about retirement. So essentially he's not going to be here for 10 more years. So unfortunately you can't let those things muck up your thinking. Howie's proven he will not. I think ultimately it comes down to how much playing time he's going to get, and that relates to what the plans are for the rest of that defensive end group. The only 2 guys 100% that are going to be here are Bennett and Barnett. Everybody else, even Brandon, we don't know yet.
You including the tackles there?
Well, no. I mean, the
tackles
are
just making sure.
Yeah, Fletcher.
Yeah, you get people out there that, well, he said that they're going to cut Fletcher Cox. I'm trying to help you out, John.
Yeah, not in a million years. Defensive end, I'm talking about. Fletcher's a defensive tackle. Fletcher's going to be here.
Hey, John, I want to go back to Worley because do you see him playing a lot here, or is this just because of cap flexibility, like even if they trade Darby, that they're making this move? I mean, is he better Worley than anybody they have. And Mike and I talked about guys that come here and fit this system better and get more successful when they come here.
Well, as I said, he's a zone corner. If you look at how Carolina plays, and that's when really going back to when Josh Norman was so effective and was an all-pro. One of the reasons Carolina let him go is because they played so much zone defense, and they said, well, do we really want to pay a zone corner franchise level money, franchise player level money? And their ultimate answer was no. That's the way they play defense. So you don't know a ton about him as far as bump and run, as far as press coverage. He obviously has size to do it. People in the NFL don't think he projects that well as a man coverage guy, and that's where the talk comes in as ultimately moving to safety at some point. He may do that. But as I said, he's a 23-year-old kid. And sure, anytime you have somebody with talent, and he's a former third-round pick, and you sort of match him up with Jim Schwartz, there's an opportunity you're going to have significant improvement. So from that standpoint, anytime you can get a 23-year-old corner with size and give him to Jim Schwartz, I say take a shot. You basically have a 2-year window at a very cost-effective rate to see what he is as a player.
A lot of corners on the market. Jeremy Lane, Richard Sherman, both released by the Seahawks today. You wonder if Howie's picking up the phone and saying, hey, Seattle, you need anybody?
Yeah, I mean, well, that's where the Darby trade. But, yeah, for people asking if the Eagles are going to pick up Richard Sherman, no, they have enough corners. They'll be looking to get rid of one. And, again, more likely than not, it's probably going to be Ronald Darby.
We've had a couple of high-profile players suggest that they would be interested in playing for Philadelphia. One in Demikong Suh said he would play for free. And another one is wide receiver Tavon Austin has kind of indicated he'd be interested. I don't know that Suh is much of a fit, but would a guy like Austin be a possible replacement for Torrey Smith?
No, but I'll tell you where he would fit in, and that's as a returner. The Eagles want to upgrade their return game, and that was part of the special teams aspect. And if Darren Sproles isn't back, and I don't know how they're going to bring Darren back. We don't even know if Darren wants to come back or he's going to retire 100%. They want to improve that return game, and Austin is one of the most dynamic returners in the league. But as a receiver, he's more of a gimmick guy. He's more of a manufactured touch guy, and they want more of a true outside receiver who can stretch the field.
John, how about a guy like Jeremy Maclin? I've seen that name out there as the guy that the Ravens are probably going to cut to save some salary cap space. And now that the Eagles have moved on from Torrey Smith, do they go to that Maclin well again?
No, I don't think so. I think they're looking to get younger, and as I said, remember, they brought in Mac Hollins, his old offensive coordinator at North Carolina, as the new receivers coach. So I think, in a best-case scenario, he takes the huge jump from year one to year two, and he takes over that spot. But I do think they're going to bring in other bodies. They have to bring in other bodies. Remember, they also traded Marcus Johnson in the Bennett deal. So they're going to draft one or two, and maybe they look for a younger receiver that has some long speed, but no, they're not going to get back in the Jeremy Maclin business. They don't want a veteran guy like that. And really, he's not a guy who's going to stretch the field at this point.
And another guy who was a former Eagle release is DeMarco Murray. He's out of Tennessee. By the way, Ryan Fitzpatrick has re-signed with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. A big contract for Mike Evans, a 5-year, $82 million contract. Also, Elvis Dumerville, the veteran defensive end, was cut today. Adam Jones, the Pac-Man, is one West Virginia corner traded, another one released. So a lot of action. What is for you come Wednesday? Well, we had Lee Steinberg on earlier. Now, he said he was kind of laughing about how They have the free agent period and then the legal tampering. He said, well, none of these days really apply to any of us. They've been talking a whole heck of a lot here. Come Wednesday, what is the number one free agent story that you're paying attention to?
Oh, well, Kirk Cousins.
And real quick, by the way, last night, Aqib Talib was traded to St. Louis, or L.A., I should say. So now they've got a pair of new corners out there with Talib and last week getting Marcus Peters. So the Rams really beefing up the secondary.
Yeah, they also picked up Sam Shields, who's trying to make the comeback from a bunch of concussions, and he's had he had a ton of talent. He was with Green Bay, so if he's healthy, I mean they have a surplus of talent. And remember who the defensive coordinator is, and remember where he was before he came to the Rams, and obviously Wade Phillips in Denver with Aqib Talib did some pretty good things. And then to have a talent like Marcus Peters on the other side, you almost have a new version of the no-fly zone with the Rams. So the Rams are going to be very talented on defense. They already were very talented, but even better. As far as the biggest free agent, though, domino on Wednesday, it's unquestionably Kirk Cousins. See how much money he's going to get if he breaks the $30 million barrier, and how much guaranteed money he gets, whether it ends up being the Jets or the Vikings or the Broncos. But he's going to get a ton of money.
You've been intrigued in that, John, like whether or not he's playing the Vikings and the drama that comes out each day. I mean, there's been very few off-season things that have been as compelling maybe as the where Kirk Cousins is going to end up story.
No, I mean, I think the story is, does he want the most money or does he want an opportunity to win? If he wants the most money, it's the Jets or Cleveland, perhaps, if they want to go that direction. If he wants an opportunity to win, it's the Vikings or the Broncos. A lot of people have speculated that the NFLPA will push him towards taking the most money, but I don't believe that. I think that's more of a baseball thing. I don't think the NFLPA has ever done that. And ultimately, I think Kirk is going to end up in Minnesota.
All right, John McMullen, busy weekend, I'm sure. As of course, the NFL never stops. The legal tampering period begins here shortly, and we've got another trade as the Browns are trading 2 draft picks to Miami for Jarvis Landry, that according to Adam Schefter. So Landry going to Cleveland. Before we even get finished the segment, stuff happens here, John. Man.
Yeah, and they franchised him to trade him, so it'll be interesting to see what they get back.
What the 2 picks are.
As far as draft pick compensation, because remember, on top of it, you also got to pay a slot receiver $17 million unless you work out a long-term extension and get a little bit of cap relief. That's a heavy price tag.
Yep.
And that's what you always have to be concerned with when you trade players, and that's the concern of a lot of things, and the fact that not only do you have to give up that compensation, but you also have to pay these guys a heck of a lot of money.
News never stops. Legal tampering begins Monday, and then the free agent, or is it Sunday?
It begins Monday, and one of my pet peeves, because that is an oxymoron, but nonetheless, that's what they call it. Legal tampering.
Begins Monday. NFL free agency begins Wednesday. John McMullen will be all over it. And if you're not following him at JF McMullen, you are missing out on all the NFL news, and it's on our website, 973ESPN.com. Thanks, John.
All right, thank you, guys.